Hey everybody, this is Kelly of Rojo Chief Clothing, and I'm here to talk to you today about ear stretching in American Indian culture. Now, this website is called Mexiclory, I think that's how it's pronounced, and it says text summary for kids. Aztec plugs were enough to split your ears. It says Aztec men and women wore big tubular and round earplugs that were special because they showed whether someone was a soldier, a king, a priest, or even a teacher. The man in this picture doesn't look too happy about his earplug though. So that's what they're talking about, the image there. And it says, imagine wearing an earring as thick as your finger. People must have learned to stretch the skin in their earlobes from an early age. It says earplugs were often made out of bone, leather, wood, gold, and even jade or turquoise. If you were a brave and famous warrior, a member of the vast Aztec army, which of these earrings would you wear? Okay. And it says here, indeed, Aztec men did wear ornaments in their ears as well as their noses and lips. What is interesting, though, was what the wearer of this jewelry meant in their society in pre-Hispanic Mexico. So when they say pre-Hispanic, they're talking about the Europeans, such as the Spanish and the Portuguese. It says ornaments were not just sported for their beauty or to show richness and prestige. Each piece of handcrafted metal, stone, leather, bone, or wood indicated a social or military rank and could even have had been worn as a religious symbol. Okay. Now, since picture 1, for example, shows the goddess Cha Chialuku, patroness of earth-bound waters such as lakes, oceans, rivers, streams. And in her ears she wears a jade stone called Cha Chi Hus and Noat. Jade was the divine symbol for water. When Aztecs produced earplugs of jade, it's probable that mainly priests dedicated to the water deities would have worn them. Earplug in Nuat is called Nako Chitil in the glyph, picture 2. Then they're seeing, now you're seeing all these different ones. And then here, they're showing a soldier. And he has an earplug in his ear. Okay. It says, these were a very common shape of ornaments for both Aztec warriors, officials, and nobility alike. The Codex Mendoza does not indicate what materials they were made of, but we do know that their bearers commanded authority. Okay. And then you have this one. It says Quetzalcoatl's hooked earplug. One Aztec god of creation was called Quetzalcoatl when he dared go down to the underworld to challenge Lord Death, Mictlantecuhtli, and retrieve the bones of humankind. Okay. And then they have an image of him right here. All right. So that's part of the history dealing with earplugs in the ancient American culture. Now I'm about to talk about the Mayans. Okay, now on this article it says status, symbolism, spirit of the Mayan ear flare. This document was submitted to us for inclusion on our website because of the topic and the fact that it cites one of our own articles. It says, Laura Loudon says, my artifact is a jade ear flare from the Mayan Empire. It measures 48 millimeters wide and about 47.3 millimeters long. A hole in the middle measures 27.4 millimeters across. The ear flare is not consistent in its thickness. Thinnest edge is 3.8 millimeters thick, while the thickest point is 9.9. And then I'm going to skip down, and you see it right here. It says ear flares have been a part of human expression and body modification throughout time and across cultures. It says the flare's physical purpose was to stretch the skin of the earlobe into an elongated circular shape. Depending on each culture's standard, this modification could meet physical standards of beauty, represent traits of character, or reflect a combination of the two. The material used to make the ear flare also played a large role in the owner's social prestige. In the Mayan world, an ear flare derived from jade, a mineral more precious than gold to the Mayan people, was a display of wealth and power by the elite of the society. Due to the slow nature of ear stretching, it also was a sign of patience and discipline. Children would have their ears pierced at ages 4 through 7, beginning with small flares, and would gain progressively wider ear flares as they went through their life milestones. The ear flare was also seen as a physical extension of the human ear and a way to further the connection to other subjects, speech, and song, acting as a mediator. Besides the use of an ear flare to display these traits, there was a much deeper religious meaning associated with jade and the design of the ear flare as a spiritual conductor. And the initial design of the ear flare stems from the nocturnal flower Ceiba pentandra, the Ceiba tree believed by the Mayans to be the tree of life. The flare was not just the rounded piece of jade itself. Typically, a disc would be inserted into the hollow middle, and this held a cylindrical bead with a smaller rounded bead on its end. Oftentimes, there will be pieces of having stranded beads or thread protruding from the front, a bead in the back acting as a counterweight. It was used to keep the intricate and heavy design in the earlobe. As shown in Figure 1 and Figure 2, the flower design was implemented by the round disc of the flare, acting as a cowlick, outermost collection of sepals, and the bead on the end of the cylindrical bead acting as the pistil, the collective parts from the ovary to the stigma of the flower. And so right here they're showing you an illustration of how it would have looked going into somebody's ear. And they're showing you the bead of how it would have been held on to the person's ear. And then this is the earring itself. And it says even more essential to the meaning of the ear flare was its crafting from jade, a mineral harder than steel. A hole would have been demandingly drilled in a jade ear flare using a hollow bird bone filled with a wet abrasive. the main source of jade, came from the Motagua Valley of Guatemala, making it prized and rare to obtain. The Mayans loved resplendent shades of green, as it represented the color of life. It was the same color as the corn plant, the sacred crop of which they believed themselves to be made of and formed by the mixture of corn flour and the blood of the gods. A quote used by Carl Tube explains, "Jade is a stone with life that gives life because it is identified with the sun, water, blood, sacrifice, sustenance. It was also revered for its beauty and ancient tradition, and as a living material, could connect the living to the dead. Furthermore, kings were seen as intermediates between gods and their people." Quoting the late expert on the Mayan epigraphy and iconography, Linda Chazelle, and the Mayan archaeologist David Friedel, in his book Stone of Kings, In Search of the Lost Jade of the Maya, author Gerard Helfrich explains, these kingly jewels asserted the inherent superiority of their wearer within a community of human beings, transforming a person of merely noble rank into a being who can test and control the divine forces of the world. Mayans had an animistic view of the world, believing that every object, living or inanimate, possessed a spirit. Jade had the qualities of an eternal spirit, which was very strong, as it was rare, did not burn, and was very hard. It makes sense that a Maya king, seen as a god in the eyes of his people, would want to harness these particular qualities. Jade was also physically representative of the soft wind, which brought rain, and the rejuvenating breath soul. When cold, jade will condense vapor on its surface, and when it becomes hot from the sun, then condensation will evaporate and appear as vapor. Consequently, symbolize that jade had the power to retain the soul, breath spirit of an individual, and the power to release it. Ear flares were the decorative item most connected to this breath and wind symbolism. The projecting jade bar and bead from this disc of the ear flare was a physical representation of moist breath. This is the important concept of ear flares were thought to be sources and channels for the passing of the birth spirit. And aforementioned jade bar and bead symbolize the serpent itself. The Mayan death phrase, Ach Bihi, meaning enters the road, directly refers to the ear flare as a passageway. In iconography, the Ach syllable is represented by a rattlesnake's tail, and immediately after the ear flare represents the symbol B-E. These both phonetically and literally represent the serpents passing through the road provided by the ear flare. In Mayan art, when gods are shown coming from the mouth of a serpent passing through an ear flare, it means they are being conjured. This continues in the late classic iconography, where serpents are still used to depict the symbol of breath and can be found in the Dresden Codex. Okay, so I'm going to stop it there. I'm going to have these articles listed below, and I'm also going to show you where they was talking about King Tutankamen of ancient Egypt, and I had taught you guys about the connection between the ancient Egyptians and the Mayans. So here it is on this website, Arca, Tutankhamun, stretched ear hangers. It's well known that the ancient Egyptians practicing ear stretching. In fact, as can be clearly seen from his death mask, the most famous Egyptian of them all, Tutankhamun, had his ears stretched to about 10 millimeters to 12 millimeters. There are no depictions of him actually wearing earrings, but there were some large gauge earrings found in his tomb in the Valley of the Kings, and one pair is absolutely astounding. Okay. Now I'm going to go down. It says they feature an elaborate duck design which hangs from 10 millimeter bars. The duck had a special meaning in ancient Egypt. It was eventually associated with all things erotic. The marvelous blue-headed ducks have outstretched wings which form a circle held in their feet, are Egyptian Shin signs. In ancient Egypt, Shin means encircle, and the Shin ring represent eternal protection. The duck's heads are made of translucent blue glass, and the wing is enameled. Under the duck are 5 rearing cobras. What a stunning pair of ear hangers, and they are over 3,000 years old. The quality and craftsmanship are astounding and show that ear weights and hangers were treasured item of jewelry then and still are now. So, as you see it right here. And there's the cobras, the bottom. Okay. And as you see here, this is an image of a Mayan with earplugs made out of jade. And I told you about the Aztecs. I told you about the Mayans and how in both the Aztec and Mayan American Indian culture, it dealt with, your rank and which type of materials that was used for your earplug or your ear hanging. Okay, whether if it was going to be made out of wood, if it was going to be made out of jade. And as you learned that the kings were the ones who wore jade because it was a very strong, crystal or stone that is stronger than steel. Okay, so if you like this broadcast, please give me a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I'm out.